Welcome to Facebook Live. It's Friday about 1:30. Today's topic is 3 essential stretches to do after every run. Now we've kind of picked this topic partially because this is a common question that we get, especially from our runners. What are the 3 biggies that I can do, or what's important for every runner to do after a run? And the really tough thing about this is there really are not 3 essential stretches for every runner. Everybody's different, everybody's individualized. You might have different mechanics. You might be a forefoot striker or a heel foot striker. You might have different cadence or different gait. You might be running on different terrain. Maybe you're running on concrete versus you're on a track as a high school athlete. All of those factors are going to change what stretches you need to do, as well as your basic anatomy. We're all built somewhat different. But what I like about this topic is that we can use a couple stretches to kind of be more or less tests to see where you're tight, and then we can hone in some stretches from there. So the stretches that I'm going to share with you today are not only helping us stretch entire chains of tissue, they're not working on one particular muscle, they're working on a chain of tissue, but they should also help give you insight into where you might need to spend a little bit of work or where you might be putting a little bit too much force. So for our first one, I need a buddy, so I'm going to call Katie on screen to come on up here. I'm going to have her lay down on her stomach. And for this is what we call an anterior spiral line stretch. So we're trying to get a whole chain of tissues again. So she's going to start out with her body in kind of an X position, just like this. We want to make sure that rib cage and pelvis are going to stay parallel throughout this motion. We don't want her rotating just purely through her spine. We want to keep her kind of parallel here. She's going to take one leg and she's going to bring it back and across her body. She's going to keep her pelvis parallel to her rib cage, or at least close to that, and she stretches right like this. And now you can see we're getting a stretch kind of all the way down this line, all the way down across the abdomen, and then all the way down across the hip. This is great to kind of get, again, not one tissue, but to get a little bit of IT, a little bit of hip flexor, a little bit of oblique, a little bit of lat, all of which you have to use while you're running. Now, if you get into this position and you feel a real hot spot or a lot of tension up here, then you need to spend a little bit more time stretching or mobilizing this tissue. If you feel a lot of tightness or tension here, that tells you might be putting too much load on those tissues, or that's maybe where you need to spend a little bit of focus. So you're going to hang out in this position for 20-30 seconds. Make sure you're taking nice deep breaths. Make sure that this stays kind of in a parallel position. You're not letting your back all the way arch. And then you can kind of come out of that position and use that information to get into some future stretches. Obviously doing both sides. So that's the first one. It's what we call an anterior spiral line stretch. The second one that I'm going to do, I'm going to get up and I'm going to move just a little bit, but we're going to do what's called a hamstring stretch. Every runner has heard of. A lot of people do it laying down. In this situation, I like to do it standing up. So what I want you to do is find something that you can put your foot up on, and it can be a table, a chair, anything like that. You want to make sure that your toe is pointing toward the ceiling. So a lot of people have a tendency to let their foot flop out. The reason I like to do it standing is because I want to make sure that you're bending just through the hip. We're going to keep our foot flexed or up instead of down, because again, I'm trying to work a whole chain. From here, I want you to think of this as one piece and this as one piece. Just like in Barbie, she doesn't have a waist, she only bends at the hips. That's what I want you to think. You're going to bend at your hips and fold. You notice I'm not curling, I'm folding at my hips, and I only go as far as I can flow pull. Now, I'm stretching tissues from kind of the top of the hip, down along the back of the hamstring, the back of the calf, and even into the bottom of the foot. If I feel a lot of tension in the calf, then I need to spend more time there. If I feel a lot of tension in the hamstring, I need to spend time there. This is not purely just a hamstring stretch, although we term it that because it's the largest muscle group being stretched. But we're working that whole chain from the bottom of the foot, the bottom of the calf, all the way to the back of the hamstring, into the back. Again, hold for 20 or 30 seconds, switch sides, and go ahead and come out of it. The third stretch that I'm going to give you is a hip flexor stretch. Again, we term it hip flexor because it's the largest muscle group, but we are working on everything kind of from the rib cage, through the front of the hip, through the quad, and all the way down. For this guy, you can either prop your foot up on something, if you have something available. Otherwise, you can leave your foot down. And what I want you to think of is, again, we're not moving through the back, but I want you to drive your hips underneath you and stretch from the knee all the way up and through. Again, I'm not fulcruming here, I'm fulcruming from the hip, and then I can add my hand to reach up or to reach over. So again, I'm getting a whole chain of tissue all the way through. If I add my foot up onto something and I use that motion, I can get a little bit more into the quad. Again, where do you feel the stretch? Wherever you feel it, it's gonna be where you're gonna spend some extra time. Hold it 20 to 30 seconds, switch sides. I would say these are probably the 3 biggest, mainly because they work chains of tissue, not an individual tissue. And stay tuned for future posts where we'll break these down a little bit further. Thanks for joining us.